perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
The last elections of 2024. It's the battle for India's economic heart. An election
Hello and welcome. This is India Sense. I'm Gaurie, Dwivedi. And before we get you the headlines, viewers, this week onwards, you can now get all the stories, all the big interviews of India Sense by scanning the QR code flashing on your screens right now. Let's get going with the show for headlines. First up, Prime Minister Modi and his big three-nation tour comes to an end.
Culture, cuisine and cricket.
After co-chairing India-Caribbean Community Summit, holding bilateral talks and interacting with the Indian community, Prime Minister Modi wraps up the warm and productive Guyana visit and the historic three-nation tour. Another embarrassing flip-flop by Trudeau's government. Ottawa slams the shocking report that linked Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar and the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval to criminal activities on Canadian soil. Same song and dance at COP29 all over again as countries fail to reach consensus over climate financing for developing countries. Winds of change on the horizon in Asia after India-China discuss resumption of direct flights and the Mansarovar Yatra following diplomatic thaw post the border disengagement. Prime Minister Modi and UK's Keir Starmer announced relaunch of the UK-India free trade talks early 2025 after months of delay due to elections in both the countries. And Eurasia Group's president and founder Ian Bremmer breaks down Trump 2.0 and what's next in this exclusive conversation with NDTV. All right, the big story on India Sense this week. Prime Minister Modi is returning to India after a three-nation tour which included Guyana and Brazil for G20. And the first stop for Prime Minister Modi in this trip was Nigeria. The visit is the latest in a series of measures that's aimed to boost India's presence, influence and stakes in Africa. In fact, a continent which is now fast becoming an epicenter of the power tussle that's taking place between Africa's former colonizers, China and countries like India that enjoy enormous goodwill. This report tells you the stakes that are there for India in Africa.
भारत की प्रगति से आप खुश होते हैं और यहाँ आपकी प्रगति पर हर भारतवासी का सीना चौड़ा हो जाता है.
In 1884, the Berlin Conference kicked off the scramble for Africa. Between European nations, UK, Germany, France, Portugal, Belgium and others that divided the continent amongst them, known for its rich resources and access to trade routes. Fast forward to now, where the former colonial powers are struggling to be relevant as players like India gain ground. Between 1992 and 2022, India's trade with Africa rose from $890 million to $98 billion. African Union is now India's fourth largest trading partner, with Nigeria accounting for almost a fifth of this. Nigeria is witnessing significant Indian investments in steel, power generation, petrochemical and defense production. And it's not just Nigeria. Indian investments are focused in the 6 lion economies, or those that have high growth rates and prospects, like the Asian tigers 4 decades back. China remains one of the largest investors in Africa, pumping in $170 billion in the last 2 decades. But India is catching up. Indian investments are projected to touch $150 billion by 2030, while some of Chinese investments have been very strategic in nature, like the Djibouti to Addis Ababa railway line. The backlash due to debt trap concerns is allowing India a unique opportunity to come in with its investments and funds that allow Africa and African economies to prosper.
Now, China's loans to Africa have fallen from $28 billion in 2016 to under $1 billion in 2022, telling the scope that lies for India and the opportunity. But it's not just about investments. India appointed defense attaches to important countries like Mozambique, Tanzania, Ivory Coast and Djibouti, where China owns a large port. And these appointments indicate the intent to increase strategic engagements and boost defense production. This is the reason why Africa matters so much to India for its strategic, geopolitical and long-term ambitions. Now, is this the beginning of a new era in Asia? After years of tension, clashes and mistrust, the world's 2 largest countries, that is India and China, are now attempting to, what one may say, rewriting their story. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, in fact, sat down with his Chinese counterpart for their first meeting since the military disengagement in Ladakh earlier this week in Laos. Not only this, in fact, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar also met with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on the sidelines of the Rio G20 summit in Brazil. The stakes, in fact, couldn't have been higher. And the question remains, are these 2 giants of Asia finally heading towards peace and growth, or is this just another blip, given the fact that there are still thorny issues that need to be resolved? The very fact that the 2 defense ministers were able to sit down and talk after the violent clashes 4 years back in Galwan Valley is nothing short of what one may see as remarkable. Coast of Galwan, of course, still remain, and there's good reason for that. And in fact, we'll tell you exactly what Defense Minister also said, that quote that is flashing on your screens. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh made it clear to his counterpart, the Chinese counterpart, that Galwan-like incidents must be avoided at all costs. A firm stance, a clear message: India is no longer willing to let its guard down. That's essentially what the big message was. And in the world of geopolitics, these are not just words, they are the foundations for future relations. And Defense Minister's statement highlight New Delhi's refusal to roll over when it comes to any Chinese aggression. India's military response to China's expansionist ambitions in Ladakh was a pivotal moment. It wasn't just a boundary dispute, it was a check on the dragon's regional power play, a wake-up call that the tiger wouldn't just lie down. And now, as the dust settles, both sides are looking at a new horizon. The latest round of talks follows a crucial meeting that took place between Dr. Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart in the Foreign Ministry on the sidelines of the G20 summit. These discussions focused on economic cooperation, border security, and further evidence that both sides are willing to now take the discussion forward, given that now ties are out of the freeze. Not only this, both nations have agreed to explore resuming direct flights, and a move that could reinvigorate both trade, tourism, and of course people-to-people ties. They're also looking at kick-starting the Kailash Mansarovar, a very important pilgrimage visit for India. In fact, now the question is this a diplomatic thaw or is it a turning point as far as India-China relations? The Chinese Foreign Ministry has called it, quote-unquote, a starting point, a new starting point for the bilateral partnership. But as any seasoned diplomat knows, there is a lot more as far as these comments are concerned. But the tip of the iceberg, really, the real test will be as to what will follow from here on. And that is really the key question to watch out for. That will India and China, will it be a mix of cooperation or will there also be some competition? And that could happen given the fact that they will have to work together when it comes to Trump tariffs. They will have to collaborate given the fact that they have common goals regarding trade. They will possibly compete when it comes to regional supremacy in Asia. And at times there could be confrontation which cannot be ruled out given their border disputes. Well, the clock is ticking and the pressure is mounting quite literally when it comes to COP29. Another breaking point it has reached. Developed countries are dodging the question yet again. How much climate finance are they willing to put up on the table to ensure that developing countries can progress? They can address their climate challenges, they can meet the common climate goals, and also ensure that they can avoid the climate catastrophes. Negotiations have hit a standstill, nothing new, something that happens year on year. Take a look at this report that tells you what's different this time around, except for possibly more expectations and hope.
The gloves are off at COP29. After days of intense discussions, a stunning breakdown has left the summit teetering on the edge of disaster. In a move that has shocked the world, all countries have rejected the latest climate finance draft, plunging the summit into chaos. The central issue? A simple yet unsettling question. How much money will the developed world commit to help the global south face the climate crisis after 2025? The developing world has made their demands clear. At least $1.3 trillion per year to combat escalating climate disasters. That's 13 times the $100 billion pledged back in 2009, a promise that was never fully met. Yet, despite the urgency, rich nations continue to play the old game of cat and mouse, dodging responsibility and leaving the most vulnerable in the lurch.
What do we want?
Meanwhile, negotiators have been mulling over numbers at yet another cozy retreat. Unfortunately, nothing close to what's needed. The European Union is proposing a target of $200 to $300 billion a year, but that's a mere drop in the ocean compared to the trillions the developing world needs. For the global south, this is old hat, another round of broken promises and empty words. As they watch the rich nations circle the wagons, it's clear that the climate finance conversation is once again stuck in a loop of hogwash. The proposed sums fall far short of the mark, and as the impact of climate change continues to wreak havoc, the rich world seems content to sit pretty.
When Prime Minister Modi is launching a scheme for 10 million or 1 crore rooftop solar plants in India, that matters. But the climate talks, so to say, have limited significance.
This latest impasse raises serious questions about the commitment of wealthy nations. The gap between what's needed and what's being offered is widening by the day, and the clock is ticking. If the rich nations don't come to the table with a serious offer, the consequences could be catastrophic. For the developing world, the stakes couldn't be higher. If COP29 fails to deliver, it won't just be another summit gone wrong. It will be a devastating blow to the planet's future. But right now, it feels more like a storm on the horizon. with the clock ticking down and no solution in sight. As the negotiators scramble, the question remains, will they rise to the challenge, or will they be remembered as just another footnote in the long history of climate inaction? With Arjun Samar Mahindran, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
All right, we're slipping into a very short break. We come back on the other side and get you the big voice this week on India Sense. Ian Bremmer on what Donald Trump's second round means at Oval Office for India. Stay with us.
It's a web of frauds, calls, luring emails, threatening messages. Cyber frauds have cast their net wide and everyone is at risk. We track the victims, their horror stories as they get conned online, extorted and robbed of their hard-earned money. How to identify a cyber fraud and how to stay cyber safe. What are your options? Fraud.con, NDTV initiative for cyber safety. Only on NDTV 24/7.
हम ये चुनाव विकास के मुद्दे पर लड़ रहे हैं.
Let them come for an open debate with me. I've challenged Eknath Shinde multiple times.
Congress is in the worst situation in this state.
महायुति में भी इससे ज़्यादा dispute है.
Everything is fair in love and politics.
वोट देने वाले ही जिताने वाले हैं ना.
So we worked on 4 options.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
India's IT capital is always buzz. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
Welcome back. You're watching India Sense. It's time to get you the big voice on the show this week. Top political scientist and global thinkers Ian Bremmer speaks to me on India Sense on what does Trump 2.0 mean going forward for the world and, of course, for India. Mr. Bremmer, thank you so much for taking out the time speaking to me on NDTV. My first question to you, sir, is the fact that we're speaking at a time when there is now greater alignment that's taking place. You have Russia, Iran, China, North Korea essentially becoming more close in terms of cooperation. What does this mean for Donald Trump as he comes to power 2 months from now?
Well, it would have shaped Biden's policies or Harris' policies a lot more than Trump's policies. Trump is not particularly interested in what kind of a political system you have. He's just as happy to cut deals with authoritarians as he is with Democrats. where Biden talked about a world between democracies and autocracies, the good guys versus the bad guys. Trump doesn't see it that way at all. He actually thinks that anyone that's willing to cut a deal with him, he'll cut a deal with. He'll do it one-on-one because he's more powerful than the other countries sitting in a room by themselves. Now, Trump is willing to cut a deal with the Russians, and he's much more willing than any other American president would have been. He's also willing to cut a deal with the Chinese. Now, he's going to put more tariffs on China, and he has appointed a number of China hawks in his administration waiting for confirmation. But the fact is that if the Chinese are willing to cut him a good economic deal, even a good diplomatic and military deal, Trump is much more likely to accept it than other leaders would be. So I don't think Trump is particularly bothered. Look, Trump is not someone that even cares about a strong Europe. He doesn't like the EU. He wants to deal with individual European leaders. Most American presidents would think that a strong European Union in a global order that's more chaotic and fragmented would be good for the United States. Trump doesn't. Trump thinks a strong EU is a competitor to the United States. He wants it to fragment. So in many ways, U.S. foreign policy is becoming more Chinese in orientation. What I mean by that, less about common values, very tactical, very transactional, and really eschewing multilateral sort of environments in favor of one-on-one negotiations where the Americans or where the Chinese are more powerful.
Okay. But specifically in terms of appointments that Trump administration has been making, what does this signify for India?
The Indians are one of the few countries in the world that was set to have a very strong relationship with the United States, whether or not Kamala Harris or Donald Trump won. Some of that is about the reality that U.S.-China relations are poor, lack trust, and that there are a lot of American corporations that are starting to de-risk, as they like to call it, their exposure from China, and a lot of that investment is moving into India. The Indian economy is growing much faster, and it's a fairly large economy than any other major economy in the world, so it's a more attractive destination for trade and for investment. There's a lot of well-educated people that can work with the United States in technology sphere, which is very important. Also you have a reality that you've got a lot of diplomatic alignment between the countries, a lot of trust that you've built with new architecture, particularly the Quad. So all of that is positive. Having said that, Trump does not like trade surpluses in other countries' favor, and he will be interested in increasing tariffs against Indian goods unless he gets transactional benefits, just like he will against other allies around the world.
Okay. So barring the trade tariff issue, do you think a Trump 2.0 would actually be positive and very good for India?
Absolutely. I think in every other aspect, except for the long-term aspect. I mean, long-term, India is a country that would benefit from more global governance. You probably know at the COP29 summit in Baku this week, the Americans haven't been doing very much. Trump isn't interested in putting money into a global loss and damages fund that would allow the developed countries to pay for the costs of climate change and industrialization that are going to be borne by poorer countries like India, like Southeast Asia, like the sub-Saharan African countries. Of course, that's a problem for India. I mean, if India wants to continue to industrialize, it needs accountable and responsible partners that care about global leadership, that care about 1.5 billion Indians in the world and not just their own populations. Trump doesn't. Trump's America First policy is India somewhat later when they think about it, and not our problem. And long-term, a United States that doesn't care about the values in the UN Charter or in the World Bank or in the IMF or in any of these multilateral agencies, those are problems for the Indians long-term.
Okay. So would that mean that under a Trump administration, India's aspiration to be a permanent member at the UNSC could probably become that much farther from the goal?
So his appointee for ambassador to the UN has no particular interest in the UN, no experience, and certainly isn't a fan of it. I think there's a lot of concern in the UN, including from the Secretary General personally, that a Trump administration would stop paying dues from the United States to the United Nations. Now, that's going to be a weaker UN. Is a weaker UN with an absent United States, is that a place where India might have more ability to play a role? At the structural level, yes, because if India is willing to, have more involvement with peacekeeping, for example, with refugee support, for example, an organization like UNRWA that the Americans have pulled out of, India will be able to have a lot more influence at the UN. But the Security Council is broken, and an American veto is a unilateral ability to prevent reform, which I expect that the Trump administration will wield repeatedly. So in that regard, I think India can have more influence in the UN structure, just like China has had more influence over the past years. India should do a lot more at the UN and with the UN, but not in the Security Council, in my view.
Okay, given the focus that a Trump administration is expected to have on China, how does this fit in with the recent thaw that India has seen with its relationship with China?
We don't yet know exactly what the economic ministries in the U.S. will be, and that will determine how hard the Americans pursue the 60% tariffs on China they've been talking about, which could cause an immediate crisis. Certainly under Trump, there is the possibility of a Cold War with China. You would see a more hawkish orientation by incoming Secretary of State Marco Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, on issues like Taiwan, for example, on U.S. national security and technology vis-a-vis China. And if you're India, that means you have a better relationship with the U.S., but it also means that you're getting pushed more to take a more hawkish stand on China, which happens to be the largest trade relationship that India has in the world. So again, on balance, if you're India, you want peace, you want global stability, you want to be the friends of everybody, and the Trump administration does make that a little bit harder.
Okay. All right. All right, Mr. Bremmer, thank you so much for speaking to me and decoding what Trump 2.0 could mean for India. All right, shifting focus now to a story coming in from Canada. Quick take on Canada. In a dramatic turn of events, the Justin Trudeau-led government facing a storm of controversy after denying a shocking report that linked Prime Minister Modi, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval to criminal activities on Canadian soil. Not only this, Ottawa has lifted the additional security screening measures for travellers to India, which were implemented earlier this week. This comes just days after a strong rebuttal from New Delhi, calling the allegations speculative and inaccurate. But the damage has been done. Canada now finds itself caught between two opposing forces, a flip-flop of monumental proportions. For the Trudeau government, the truth seems as elusive as a needle in a haystack, and critics are calling it a desperate attempt to quell growing diplomatic tensions. The heat is on, and with tensions rising, all eyes are now on how Trudeau and his government will navigate this delicate minefield. All right, with that is a wrap on this edition of India Sense. Viewers, do not forget to tune in to all that has happened in India Sense. You can catch that entire playlist by scanning the QR code on your screens. Thanks so much for watching this episode.
I now request the Honorable Prime Minister to launch NDTV World and address the summit.
It was the grand launch of NDTV World by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. NDTV World, as he laid out his vision for the India century at the NDTV World Summit.
ऐसी सदी जिसमें भारत के प्रयासों से दुनिया में स्थिरता आए,
in the presence of those who are shaping our future.
मेरी तरफ से आपको ढेर सारी शुभकामनाएं हैं।
NDTV World, your new home for global news is here. Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number 1 in both online and offline reach in India, beating all its competition. NDTV stands for trust.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
Our $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
The last elections of 2024, it's the battle for India's economic heart. An election that will decide Maharashtra's future.
Can the big brother BJP manage the competing ambitions of Mahayuti? Can the Red Book rally the voters once again for Congress and its allies?
So as Maharashtra's future trajectory takes shape, we report from the ground.
Two visions, two ideology, one verdict. An election where no caste chemistry can yield a perfect formula.
It's a state that is splintered with power battles. The big question, will Maharashtra poll outcome unify parties or divide them further? And who will emerge as Maharashtra's undisputed leader?
It's a web of frauds, calls, luring emails, threatening messages. Cyber frauds have cast their net.
Hello and welcome to the Southern View this evening. I'm Veeraraghav. Focus on the reasonable time, quote unquote, given by the Telangana High Court to the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly to decide on the disqualification of MLAs who jump ship. And also the rising cases of cardiac arrests amongst youngsters. Those are our focus this evening. But first, let's take you through the headlines this hour. Both the MVA and the Mahayuti Alliance's leadership brace for the results. Tomorrow, the top leadership on either side are in a huddle as they chart strategy for the multiple possibilities that could unfold tomorrow. As Delhi and the NCR continues to choke with toxic air, the Supreme Court calls for strict monitoring of Delhi's entry points, wants strict monitoring of trucks that pollute, appoints 13 advocates to monitor the situation and calls for a detailed report by Monday. The Apex Court exempts Udayanidhi Stalin from a physical appearance from every court hearing the Sanatana Dharma controversy cases across India. He will have to fight each of those cases legally though. Both the ruling DMK in Tamil Nadu and the BJD in Odisha reject categorically US charges on the Adani Group. Tamil Nadu government and BJD calls those charges baseless. Well, the top focus this evening is a Telangana High Court order which comes as a setback for the BRS on the case demanding the disqualification of 3 MLAs who won on a Bharatiya Rashtriya Samiti ticket in the 2023 Assembly elections and later shifted over to the Congress. Several such MLAs, remember, have jumped ship and the BRS has been demanding that they be disqualified by the Speaker of the House as per the anti-defection laws and Supreme Court orders. A division bench of the Telangana High Court today asked the Speaker to decide the issue in quote-unquote reasonable time. The bench set aside an earlier single-judge order asking the Speaker to announce a schedule to hear the disqualification petitions within 4 weeks and that inaction to do so is subject to judicial review. Telangana MLAs have been notorious, remember, for shifting sides after an election, and the BRS, which benefited from all of this when it was in power, the Congress, which cried foul then, is now the beneficiary. The issue of disqualification and inaction of speakers on the issue is one that's had nationwide resonance, especially, remember, in cases like in Maharashtra and Karnataka in the recent past. So the big question, will the Telangana disqualification demand reach its logical conclusion, and what is quote-unquote reasonable time? Joining me this evening, my colleague Uma Sudhir, who's tracked that case very closely, KV Dhananjay, advocate at the Supreme Court, Ravula Sridhar Reddy of the BRS, NV Subhash of the BJP, and because the Congress did not want to join this debate, a pro-Congress political analyst, Syed Asad Abbas. Mr. Dhananjay, first you, give us definition, if there is one, of reasonable time and where the law and legality stand as far as this case is concerned, because this is not the first time that the Speaker's decision has come into the realm of the courts. We'll try and get across to Mr. Dhananjay in a bit. Uma Sudhir, give us an overview of the case itself. Remember, this is not just about Telangana. It's been, cases of this nature have come up in other states and gone before the courts. Is there a clear understanding of reasonable time?
So, BRS Working President K.T. Ramarao claims that the reasonable time has been very clearly defined by the Supreme Court. He says that 3 months is a time that the Supreme Court has said the Speaker can take as a reasonable time. As you recall, this had started after the elections of 2023 in which, of course, the Congress got a majority. But at that time, the BRS would be mocking them, saying that you have a slender majority. And subsequently, it was also, in a sense, should I say, revenge time for the Congress, because during the BRS first term and the second term, all the opposition parties had suffered. As many as 60 legislators, both MLAs, MLCs, they had shifted loyalties, and the Congress even suffered the humiliation of a legislature party split that happened and the merger that happened of the legislature party with the BRS. And therefore, the Congress in that sense was, it appeared as though they were proactively allowing or calling in the MLAs from the BRS, and the Congress leadership would, in fact, even Rajnath Reddy would mock the BRS leadership, saying that we are going to empty out your party. And then they started, of these MLAs moving in. As many as 10 MLAs shifted loyalties. Some of them, like Danam Nagendar, even contesting as Congress candidate, MP candidate from Sikandrabad, even though he was elected as a Khairatabad, MLA in the 2023 elections from the BRS. There is Tellam Venkat Rao, who went and met Rajnath Reddy soon after the results came. Then we also have Kadiyam Srihari, whose daughter was first given a ticket by the BRS, and then she shifted loyalties to the Congress. So right now, the debate, of course, the politicking is happening. Each of them saying that, the BRS is claiming that this is a victory for them because the Speaker has been now
I just want to interrupt you for a minute. Just hold that thought for a second, because I think we can go across to Mr. Dhananjay to just give us an overview from the legal point of view, sir. This reasonable time, as it's been spoken of before, is it still delightfully vague in legal terms, or is there a categorical, clear understanding of reasonable time that's been given to a Speaker to decide on disqualification demands for those MLAs who have shifted sides? Because this is not the first case we're going to see, and this is definitely not going to be the last such case that we're going to see.
Well, I've read the judgments of the learned single judge. It's very well reasoned. It's just that the learned single judge did go slightly outside of the established norm and said that he would want to have a schedule of hearing before the speaker, and that schedule to be specific to the next 4 weeks. I think that was a certain degree of intrusion, but that could have been corrected by the division bench by following what the Supreme Court, in fact, has done. More recently in 2020, the Supreme Court did three-judge bench of the Supreme Court did say that 3 months would be a reasonable time for the speaker to decide on disqualification petitions, and if the speaker chooses to not do so, then the courts could intervene and then issue appropriate directions. Again, these directions are not going to be in the form of we direct. Most often it is we request. So the division bench saying that the speaker should decide within a reasonable time, I think may not be quite consistent with the established law. And therefore, this matter is most likely to also travel to the Supreme Court. And should it travel to the Supreme Court, the fact that the Supreme Court in past instances has directed the speaker, and more so in this case, it's been months together. I think it's almost 5 months now. There's just no justification for any speaker to take 5 months to decide on a disqualification petition, because as lawyers, we certainly know the complexity in legal cases, but disqualification petitions, the disqualification subjects are relatively straightforward. They don't really have that much of a complexity inside of them, because the 10th schedule, gives very small number of circumstances where disqualification would occur. So in this case, it is not that the persons, people, BRS MLAs have in fact resigned from the party and joined the Congress. It is but by their conduct, they could be seen by a common man as having voluntarily given up membership of BRS. So the conduct in this case would be the public appearances and then public utterances and all that. So I don't think the speaker can possibly argue that he would want 6 months or a year to decide on a matter like this. So I think the learned single judge was justified in intervening, but not really justified in setting that rigid timeline. Because how the speaker would decide is certainly not for the court to, intrusively interfere with. Like the learned single judge said, 4 weeks. So I think this matter is going to the Supreme Court, and this will have a swift resolution. I can assure you that much.
Point here. Yeah, you're making a very nuanced point here. You're saying that it will have a resolution. Eventually, the matter would perhaps go to the apex court to decide on reasonable time and ensure that a decision is made. Mr. Ravula Sridhar Reddy, the BRS had benefited from defections. It's the reality of Telangana politics. The BRS has benefited from defections between 2014 to 2023. Now the Congress is a beneficiary. Whoever is ruling in Telangana will benefit from defections. Is that, is because you did not bother about it at that point of time that it's come back to bite you now? Your response?
No, then in the last term, when we have taken the MLAs, their legislature party merged into BRS party. So we can't, one cannot call it as a, defection or they have changed the loyalties or something like that. Now, individually, each MLA has joined Congress party. Few say sometimes they joined Congress party. Few say that, we have just, met them and kind of stuff. But end of the day, the court today, it's as if directing the speaker, rather reminding the speaker of his constitutional duties. Though they have not set any deadline, or though they have, given a verdict saying that we cannot set a deadline for the speaker, but the moment they say that he has to, complete his task in a reasonable time. So reasonable time lies with the speaker. The moral responsibility lies with the speaker to ensure the defection law is not completely discarded. And it's their responsibility now. Now, as the renowned speaker was saying, we will definitely. Hello. Hello.
I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. I just want to bring Uma Sudhir into this. Uma, this is the larger reality. Let's leave the legal point aside. Well, yes, matter will go up to the apex court. It will possibly get sorted at the legal level or perhaps by the speaker itself. But the reality of Telangana politics remains that defections to the side which has won an election is not an exception but the rule.
Absolutely, and it is not just limited to Telangana. We have seen it in several states now that this happens, and this is not something that the anti-defection law as it exists is able to address. And many people had welcomed when Rahul Gandhi had announced in his manifesto that if we come to power, we will bring about changes in the anti-defection law such that there is an automatic disqualification if somebody decides to shift parties after they have won an election from one party. But the irony is that the Congress itself is indulging in similar kind of politics here. Earlier, when Mr. Dhananjay was speaking about it and saying that for several months the Speaker is holding the plea for disqualification, what I must point out is that technically the Congress says that the Speaker has not been handed over the letters at all. They are still with the Assembly Secretary, and when the single judge order in fact came, at that time also they said that, once the Secretary hands over to the Speaker, it should be reasonable time of 4 weeks within which the schedule should be drawn up about what happens next vis-a-vis the plea itself. But you're right, it is politics that is playing out, because we have repeatedly seen now, Revant Reddy mocking the leadership of the BRS.
We need to just get a quick response from the BJP and the Congress as well, and the pro-Congress political analyst. Uma, I just want to get a quick response from Syed Asad Abbas and NV Subhash of the BJP as well. Mr. Subhash, it's the reality, as Uma is pointing out, of Telangana politics. Very quick responses from you, and then to Mr. Abbas, the last word.
Yeah, from 2014 to 2024, we have seen when the Telangana government was in power, they have taken so many MLAs, including the Communist Party MLAs, and then they have shifted the loyalties. And now, the BRS party, when their MLAs are shifting, they have gone to the court. But when the court has given a reasonable time, it is the prerogative of the Speaker to take a decision. But how long? How long he can keep the file with him. So the Congress party is very, very instrumental in getting, when Rahul Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister, he was the person who brought anti-defection law. Since the Congress party is ruling in Telangana, it is their moral responsibility to take the decision immediately, so that, the disqualification, or, they have to resign. The Bharatiya Janata Party, from so many years, we have been telling that party, the MLAs, when they're shifting, they have to resign and then come to the party, then get re-elected if they have to come. But the leaders from both the parties, from, the Congress party and, the BRS party, they have their political interests, the business interests, the family interests, so many things are attached to it. That's why they are the shifting. The second point is that the parties which are being getting elected, they are getting very, very mere majority. Out of 119, they got the 64 in 2014. But now, the Congress party, out of 119, they got only 62. This is the insecurity. They feel that their own party men will dethrone Mr. the Revant Reddy. So he has opened the floodgates to everyone, so that from other political parties they can come. But to have a very good practice, to have a president,
Syed Asad Abbas, the issue is,
the decision.
As a political analyst, the Congress crying foul in Karnataka and in Maharashtra, but you're resorting to the same tactics in Telangana. Would that be a fair assessment? You have the last word.
No, not the fair, Veera Saab. As a matter of fact, I've always believed with great power, there is great responsibility, there is equal accountability. The fact of the matter that we are discussing the time limit, be it 4 weeks or even a reasonable time, let me go as per the 10th schedule of the 52nd amendment of the role of Speaker during the anti-defection law. Let me state the law. There is no time limit as per the law within the presiding officers. Therefore, it should be decided upon a plea for disqualification. The courts also can intervene only after the officer has made a decision. So therefore, with due respect to Mr. Reddy here, the BRS representative, many a times we've seen over the last decade, many of their MLAs jumping ship. It is absolutely okay when they have done the same. Let me address the point. The 3 MLAs jumped ship when elections were held in November last year, but they jumped in April this year. That is a 5-month gap. He also needs to understand what action did they take against their MLA Kaushik Reddy, who said that defectors, he made a sexist barb, a very misogynistic one, saying that they should wear saris and bangles. Absolutely no action taken. This kind of behavior encourages. K.T. Rama Rao ji really needs to step up. When he speaks of women empowerment, when he speaks against various other controversies, you don't do anything about it. Respected sir, you need to understand, aap kare to theek hai, Congress kare to galat hai. What kind of duplicity and hypocrisy is this, sir? And let us understand, you cannot set a
10
limit
seconds,
here.
quick response from you, Ravula Sridhar Reddy. Given that, a quick response from you, and then I have to wrap this conversation.
After seeing all this in your national manifesto, rather, during the elections, Rahul Gandhi says that, they will bring out a law if they come in power in the center.
Okay.
Rahul Gandhi says something, and Revant Reddy does exactly the reverse, and you're trying to teach us. See, the question here is, what are you preaching and what you're doing out here? The double standards.
You didn't answer. What action did you take against Kaushik Reddy for
Kaushik
such a
Reddy,
remark,
You're
sir?
saying, has spoken that, and from the party side, we would have warned or we would have not warned. I mean, you will not be able to know that.
Sir, it should be made public.
Discussions out here.
All right, we'll have to leave this conversation right here, but there are final legal issues that have been raised as well. Dhananjay gave us a very nice overview of this entire issue. Uma gave us a fascinating political overview of the realities of Telangana politics. We'll keep revisiting this issue, but for the moment, let's move on to a quick check of the controversial Sanatana Dharma case against Tamil Nadu's Deputy Chief Minister Udayanidhi Stalin. The Supreme Court today exempted him from personal appearances in the Sanatana Dharma cases that have been filed against him. Remember, after that controversial remark across India. So that's one of the cases that had created a political storm ahead of the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. We'll keep a close track of that. Let's move on now to the other special focus that we have this evening. It's another reminder of the increasing cases of sudden cardiac arrest suffered by youngsters. A viral video of Vamsi, a young employee of a multinational company, collapsing due to a cardiac arrest at the wedding of his friend in Kurnool in Andhra Pradesh, reminded us of the increasing number of such cases being reported across India. The video showed Vamsi, who worked in Bengaluru, handing over a gift to his friend, surrounded by cheering people. That video that's playing on your screen, when he started to lose his balance. Statistically, the number of cases of such cardiac arrests amongst youngsters has been on the rise. So what do we need to be aware of an impending cardiac issue? Joining us this evening is Dr. Anurag Mehrotra, Chief Cardiologist and Chairman of the Siddh Hospital. Sir, cases of youngsters suffering from such sudden cardiac arrests has been growing over the years. Is this a matter of grave concern? Can you give us an overview of the situation around globally as well as in India specifically? Dr. Anurag. Dr. Anurag, you're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself, sir.
It is the dramatic images like these which shook us. But we ignore the atmosphere in which we are living. There is change in every aspect of the life, be it a diet, be it exercise, be it our working hour, be it rest. There is change, and there is a huge change. We are not able to adjust with those changes. We can come to this one by one. There are multiple risk factors. The risk factors are the things which increase the chances of having cardiovascular events. It's like diabetes, like hypertension, like dyslipidemia, it's like weight, and it is sleep time. So one by one, if we dissect them, we can understand where the problem lies. In diet, what we are eating today is lots of processed food. Be it Indian or be it from the food which is made from the Western sources. There's a lot of consumption of food additives, lot of consumption of the food which are being cooked outside home. The amount of food which we eat, which is not cooked at home, as compared to the amount of food we eat, which is cooked at home, there is gross change in the behavior regarding that. Food is available 24 hours. There are food aggregators who can provide you the food And the type of food which they provide, we all can understand. You can get that food 24 hours.
Specifically, sir.
Specifically, I should not.
What about youngsters specifically?
Specifically, that's I'm coming to you, sir. We should look at the lifestyle of the youngsters. They are not exercising enough. What they are eating food outside. They are sitting on the screen and watching the screen and doing different things. They are sitting all together. They are not moving. They are not doing exercising. They are ordering the food from outside from food aggregators, and they are getting the food which is not good for health. They are watching a screen for long hours. It is causing neuroendocrine activation, which is causing your system is always on alert. Even if the phone you are not using phone, there is some notification that causes something in your brain that activates the whole of your system. Our system is not at rest. The amount of sleep we should have is not there. Changes in every aspect of the life. This is causing the problem. The onset of diabetes is now early. The onset of hypertension is early. We are frequently seeing children and teens having hypertension. Obesity is a big problem. All of this causing, there is the ICMR data. We are having more than 11% of diabetics are with us, more than 15% are pre-diabetic. 18% are hyperlipidemic. There is 33 to 34% are hypertensive.
Okay.
On obesity, so common, more than 50%. With regard to hypertension, only 1/3 knows that they have hypertension. Only out of those, 1/3 who are able to control that. So there are multiple factors. We have to readjust our life. We have to readjust every aspect of our life. We have to make our life more balanced. Our genes are not compatible with this type of lifestyle.
Can you give us a bit of a global comparison, Dr. Mehrotra? I know you're giving very strong advice. Can you give us a global comparison, Dr. Mehrotra, in terms of have these sudden cases of cardiac arrest amongst youngsters been on a rise around the world? Is there a specific trend in India that one needs to be aware of? Or were these cases always there, and it's just that now they are getting increasingly reported, and hence we tend to be more aware of them? A very, very brief overview of this, Dr. Mehrotra, before we let you go.
In the developing societies, it has been seen there is an increase in the incidence of coronary artery disease. It was so in the American 60s, but they were able to control it.
Okay.
In India, we are in transformational stage. At that stage where America was in 60s, we are not being able to adjust with our lifestyle. That is causing the problem. And the newer aspect which is getting into it, the processed food, lack of exercise, screen time. All these things are there. We have to address every aspect of our life. We should sleep for certain hours. We should eat. We should know we should eat the food at home. We should do exercise at least half an hour.
Yes.
And every aspect of our life needs to be readjusted.
Yes, Dr. Mehrotra, important.
There is information glut. We need to do
important points that you're making there. But thanks very much for speaking to us this evening. Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts on this evening. Obviously, it's a growing concern. Something we'll keep a close watch of, health as well as other issues that could contribute to such rising cases. But that's all we have time for on The Southern View. Thanks for watching. News and updates continue right here on NDTV.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Edge 50 Pro, world's first AI-powered pro-grade camera.
हम ये चुनाव विकास के मुद्दे पर लड़ रहे हैं.
Let them come for an open debate with me. I've challenged Eknath Shinde multiple times.
Congress is in the worst situation in this state.
महायुति में भी इससे ज़्यादा डिस्प्यूट है.
Everything is fair in love and politics.
वोट देने वाले ही जिताने वाले हैं ना.
So we worked on 4 options.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
India's IT capital is always buzzing. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching NDTV. We start with some breaking news. In the midst of an escalation of violence in Manipur, there was an important security review meeting today, and in fact, a new strategy is being worked out to control violence in this strife-torn state. In fact, new SOPs for security forces, more deployment of central forces are a critical part of this strategy. Let me go across to my colleague Rajnath, who has been reporting on this story and who has more details on this.
We had a security review meeting, and in this security review meeting, we reviewed the security of all the districts and Imphal city. We discussed the issues threadbare with all the districts, along with DCs and SPs, and we noted points of their concern, which we will be addressing.
We are distributing forces to protect the life and properties of the citizens and vulnerable areas and vulnerable points. All these will be covered within a few days.
We had a security review meeting.
Rajnath, my colleague, joins us. Rajnath, a few days ago, Centre did announce that 50 fresh companies of the CAPF would be deployed in Manipur. Tell us about the new strategy that is being worked upon.
That's right. This review meeting which took place this evening is very crucial given the fact that this comes after last week's violence that escalated. There were deaths, there were shootout between militants and security forces, and today the security advisor to Manipur, Mr. Kuldeep Singh, who is a former DG of CRPF, he chairs the Unified Command which has the state forces, the state police, the central forces, the central paramilitary forces, as well as the army, the Assam Rifles. So the Unified Command today reviewed the security arrangement, and a new SOP has been formulated, which includes the area domination exercise, the operation, as well as the joint operation. Now they have decided that in every district there will be a coordination cell that will coordinate between all the security forces operating in that area. There will be joint control rooms. So in joint control rooms you will have people from the Manipur police, the paramilitary forces, as well as army as well. Centre has decided to send another 90 companies of security forces to Manipur. That would make the presence of at least 288 companies of central forces in Manipur, and in fact the forces are coming in, so those forces will be used for area domination. The priority at this moment is to make sure that there is no further loss of life and properties of common people, of citizens, so that normal life does not get affected. And then obviously there are priorities in terms of as more forces reach in, the offensive operations, the operations against the armed groups, the militant groups, as well as the armed people who have been targeting innocent citizens in different areas, particularly the vulnerable stretches like Ziribam and like the border areas between the valley region and the hill region. In those areas, operation will be launched. These are the details which have emerged out of the review meeting. We played out that soundbite of Mr. Kuldeep Singh, the security advisor, clearly saying that there is a new strategy which has been put in place, which is to have more coordination between the forces which are there on ground zero as a part of the unified command, bring in more force for not only operations to find out militants who are targeting citizens and also the armed group, but also to make sure that there are enough security forces present to tackle public unrest as well as attacks that we have seen, the sporadic violence that we have seen in Manipur in the past couple of months. And for that, now the domination of security forces is very important, and therefore they're stretching upon the coordination. 32 people have been arrested so far in connection to the recent incidents of violence as well as public unrest
being worked out for the state of Manipur, where there has been escalating violence. Thank you, Rajnath, for reporting on that important story. A new SAP for SOP for security forces is also is something that the centre is working out in coordination with the state government. Moving on to the most important domestic story that is being talked about today. Less than 12 hours to go for the big results of Maharashtra and Jharkhand. Of course, these results will start coming in tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and political parties have already started preempting the outcome, making preparations accordingly. From what we know, parties, specifically the Congress, have made multiple arrangements to keep its flock together. Equally important monitoring, but of a different kind, is being done by the Mahayuti allies, where the parties are hoping that the significant jump in the women's voter turnout in Maharashtra is because of the Ladki Bahin Yojana. In fact, Chief Minister Eknath Shinde held a meeting with his party leaders today, as did NCP founder Sharad Pawar. Shiv Sena UPT spokesperson Sanjay Raut, meanwhile, has alleged that the BJP-led Mahayuti has been contacting independent candidates and offering them bribes in the recently held elections. After Raut made these remarks, BJP actually hit back, saying that it doesn't want to snatch his right to dream. Meanwhile, a war of words also broke out between Congress State President Nana Patole and Shiv Sena UPT MP Sanjay Raut over who will be the chief ministerial face of MVA. Now, of course, this is a battle of prestige for some, battle of survival for others, and of course, an action-packed day before results. The big question, will Maharashtra spring a surprise and give a clear verdict this time? Or will there be a lot of post-poll action? Will smaller parties become significant? All those big questions there. We'll attempt to address some of them today, even as election results are all set to come out in a few hours from now. Before I go across to my panel of guests, let me go across to my colleague Radhika, who has more details on what really happened in Maharashtra today, just ahead of the poll results.
Much awaited Maharashtra Assembly election results tomorrow. Difficult to predict at this point. Parties certainly in a huddle today. In fact, they're looking at all permutations and combinations to shore up numbers in case of a hung assembly. Of course, both sides very confident of a victory. Some of the Congress leaders, in fact, saying 165 will be their number, and that chief minister face will also be decided within 12 hours of results. Mahayuti leaders, on the other hand, saying they will clinch close to 180 seats. So today, all the parties holding meetings, discussions on probabilities as well as strategies. Ramesh Chanitala, Nana Patole holding meeting with Congress leaders and candidates. Devendra Fadnavis and Bhupendra Yadav also held meeting with BJP leaders. Uddhav Thackeray also holding discussions with Sena functionaries this afternoon, and Eknath Shinde's meeting with Sena spokesperson as well. So parties certainly strategizing about what next if they are short of majority. They obviously have to take help of independents, rival candidates or smaller parties, and also have to make sure that their MLAs, their candidates, their leaders are all flocked together. So yes, looks like it's going to be a nail-biting result day tomorrow. Is it Mahayuti again, or will MVA manage to make a comeback? We will see what happens tomorrow.
Thank you, Radhika, for those critical details. We have a panel of experts with us now. Of course, also party spokespersons. We have Gopal Krishna Agarwal of the BJP. We have Charan Singh Sapra of the Congress Party, spokesperson of the Congress Party, also working president of the Mumbai Congress. And we have Amitabh Tiwari, political analyst, joining us. Thank you, all of you, for joining me on this broadcast. First to the expert, sir, Amitabh Tiwari, while the BJP has contested the highest number of seats, which is 148, it really has to depend on its partners to actually, to get that magic number. Similarly, the Congress has contested on 101 seats. It also has to rely on its partners. Tell us, in the case of whatever happens, whatever outcome, is there for us to see tomorrow, what is the larger implication for BJP and Congress?
So clearly the larger implication for both BJP and Congress is that if the Mahayuti is able to win this state, then it will be the third or the fourth state in succession after Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Haryana, where it has been able to turn the tables around and come victorious. Then what it can highlight or show to its supporters is that 2024 was an aberration and the BJP has successfully won Haryana and Maharashtra, and then it gives some confidence to the BJP leadership to continue with its contentious bills like the Waqf bill or the One Nation, One Poll or even the UCC, and its bargaining power among or with the allies also improves. However, if the Congress is able to, or the Mahavikas Aghadi is able to win this election, then what it means is that 2024 was not an aberration. There are issues like farmer distress, inflation, unemployment, which are impacting people's lives, and the government needs to do something urgently about this. And it also cements, I think, Congress Party's position in the overall India bloc. It would emerge as the clear leader of the India bloc, and it also gives confidence to the leadership, which is the High Command, which is the Rahul Gandhi and Mr. Khadge, that they are on the right track of campaign, which is raising these issues locally, and also the caste census, which perhaps is getting traction. So two different mandates will give two different implications, or will have two different implications, and we'll have to wait and watch how
These
this
are the
pans out.
implications for the national parties and for the regional parties. Of course, it is a battle of survival. To you, Mr. Sapra, a lot is being talked about women's significant voter turnout that happened yesterday. Of course, a lot of that is also being attributed to the fact that Ladki Bahin Yojana was a flagship program which the Mahayuti relied upon. And of course, today we did see, a lot of banter, a lot of back and forth between Nana Patole and Sanjay Raut. There's, how confident are you of this victory, and also the fact that women really voted for you, and the fact that these discussions on the chief ministerial phase has already begun. Is this a sign of overconfidence, or is this a sign of just being very cautious and prepared?
See, number one, we are very confident, and let me tell you that Mahavikas Aghadi will get a clear mandate. We'll get a clear majority, and we won't be needing many of the independents which they might win tomorrow. As far as the other thing is concerned, you were saying that women have voted in large numbers. Yeah, women have voted, but that doesn't mean that they have voted just because of that Ladki Bahin Yojana. You see, the major issue in Maharashtra was also inflation. The kind of essential prices of essential commodities, how they have risen, that has directly affected a women. So women have come out and they have voted against the Mahayuti, who could not control inflation, who could not control the agrarian crisis, who could not control the rising unemployment, who could not control the financial crisis in the state, and who have ditched the people by just promising various things but doing nothing. So these are the things, and we are not bothered if more women have come and they have voted for Mahavikas Aghadi also.
Okay.
Now let me come to the third point of the chief ministership, which you said.
Yes.
I feel the Mahavikas Aghadi, we have good understanding among our state leaders, and all the leaders, including Uddhav Thackeray-ji and even the senior Congress leaders, have always said, during the campaign also and earlier also, we have said that things will get decided after the results are out. The elected MLAs will choose their leader, and the party high command will also have due consultation with the elected MLAs.
Right.
So I don't think so there's going to be much of the hassle
Okay.
in selecting the chief minister.
Okay. Let me go across to Mr. Agarwal. Marathwada, if you look at this part of the state, it's crucial for the BJP. In the Lok Sabha elections, we know that the party could not win a single seat from this part of the state, and it was largely attributed to the Maratha reservation that was taking place. And in the 8 seats in Marathwada, there has been a dip in voter turnout. 3 of them are in Beed district, which is of course Dhananjay Munde and of course Pankaja Munde. In Western Maharashtra also, there's been at least 8 seats which have recorded a dip in turnout. These are 2 difficult areas for you when it comes to the alliance, Mahayuti alliance working out, because Sharad Pawar is powerful in one. The Mahavikas Aghadi is seen as a potent force in Marathwada. Do you think this is something that is indicative of your prospects in this part of the state?
We have to understand that what is the agenda with which Congress has been working and opposition had been working. They want to divide they have a divisive agenda, one thing. And that in addition, their whole governance is with regard to the support for some of the family members or individual members or a group of persons. People have seen that if we want a stable government, if we want a government that works efficiently, if we want a government that can enhance the image of the country at the global level, which works for the economic growth of the country, so, and which has a basic formula of our government is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas and Sabka Vishwas.
Right.
So the difference between the opposition ruled states and those states which are being ruled by the BJP or NDA, that is quite clear to the people. In 2024 central election and this, based on what results of 2024 central election, some people think that BJP had a setback or NDA had a setback in Maharashtra, same may continue. It is not the case. That time a false narrative was built. People are now understanding that this was a false narrative, whether to change the constitution, etc. And so that false narrative is now broken away. The efficiency of BJP-run government is very clear to the people, and the economic growth, the delivery mechanism, e-governance, efficient delivery mechanism.
So you're
All
saying
these are
governance is
very
something
clear,
that
and
changed
people
the
are
mood
voting on that.
of the people. Amitabh Tiwari, when you talk about smaller parties, there were at least 29 seats that were won by smaller parties in the last assembly elections, and this time also we know that Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi is contesting on almost 67 seats. There's also MIM and of course MNS, and Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi last time also led to 7% vote share, and that was seen as a disruptive force when it comes to Mahavikas Aghadi's prospects. This time, when Prakash Ambedkar has said that if we get good numbers, we will support the parties in government formation because we want to go with party that is forming the government. Do you see this happening in the state of Maharashtra? Because in Haryana, we saw JJP and INLD completely collapse, which became a direct fight between the BJP and Congress, and also led to the Congress's reduction in numbers.
See, essentially, we are seeing that there is a trend of bipolarity even at the national level and at the state levels. However, the fact that there were 6 parties in these 2 alliances has given rise to a lot of rebellion in both the alliances. While we talk about 40 to 50 rebels on seats, actually there are 139 seats on which there are rebels from both from either MVA or Mahayuti or both the parties, either of significant stature leaders or some small leader, 139 seats. So there is a big role of independents and smaller parties historically also in Maharashtra. In Lok Sabha, they got only 12% vote share, but we've seen 24 to 25% vote share is the average. 25 to 30 seats is the average. Normally, smaller parties, independents, even if you see of these 29 who were MLAs in 2019, earlier most of them used to back the Mahavikas Aghadi. When the government changed, most of them shifted their allegiance to the Mahayuti alliance, because these smaller parties and independents tend to be with the government because they need development funds for their own Vidhan Sabhas and to have a good presence or a hold there. So they will go with the wind, whoever is in winning or whoever has a good chance to form the government or whoever is forming the
Right.
government.
So that
they are
seems to
most
be a
likely
very
to align with
workable
that.
idea. A complex political landscape, of course, did emerge in the state of Maharashtra. Unlike national elections, which presented a clear battle between two narratives, what we saw in the state this time was a mix of multiple issues and factors, something that I expect will be reflected in the results tomorrow. Thank you all of you for joining me on this broadcast. Also to remind you, we at NDTV will be tracking the results very closely. For all of you from tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., do join us. But now it's time for a short break. More news and updates on the other side.
Download any single ID partner app, link your card and earn reward with top brand.
Get it free with single ID.
I now request the Honorable Prime Minister to launch NDTV World and address the summit.
It was the grand launch of NDTV World by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. NDTV World, as he laid out his vision for the India century at the NDTV World Summit.
ऐसी सदी जिसमें भारत के प्रयासों से दुनिया में स्थिरता आए.
In the presence of those who are shaping our future.
मेरी तरफ से आपको ढेर सारी शुभकामनाएं हैं.
NDTV World, your new home for global news is here. Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number 1 in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
Now a $7 trillion economy seems perfect.
Welcome back. The Adani Group has rejected as baseless the move by a US department to name the group in the case of an alleged wrongdoing. In fact, the group maintains that these are mere allegations and must be only seen as such. The group has also emphasized that it has steadfastly maintained highest possible standards of corporate governance and transparency. The group has also decided to examine the legal course of action to be deployed in the said matter. Meanwhile, one of the states allegedly involved, Tamil Nadu, the DMK government there has rejected US charges. Listen in to what Tamil Nadu Minister Senthil Balaji had to say today.
தமிழ்நாடு மின்சார வாரியத்தை பொறுத்தவரை அதானி நிறுவனத்தோடு எந்த விதமான வணிக ரீதியிலான தொடர்புகளும் கடந்த 3 ஆண்டுகளாக இல்லை. அதை முதல்ல தெளிவுபடுத்தியது. வணிக ரீதியான தொடர்புகள் எந்த வகையிலும் தமிழ்நாடு மின்சார வாரியத்திற்கும் அதானி நிறுவனத்திற்கும் இல்லை.
BJD, which is the erstwhile ruling party of Odisha, has also reacted on the case, and they have issued a statement saying allegations are baseless and incorrect. Odisha had no dealings with Adani and the power pact was only with a government entity. Meanwhile, former Indian Foreign Secretary Kamal Sibal has commented on the case and he has called it an abusive use of power by the United States of America. He said, and I quote, The US has information on acts of bribery that they should move on, that they should move the Indian legal system. In fact, the indictment is against any Indian national for acts committed on Indian soil. The extraterritorial jurisdiction claimed by the US violates the sovereignty of other countries. If US investors are affected, they should seek redress from Indian justice. In fact, he goes on to ask, how has the American prosecutor investigated the matter in India? This would be a violation of Indian law and sovereignty. And the prominent strategic affairs expert Bremmer has also spoken on this. He has said that the US indictment of Adani for alleged bribery in India fits with a pattern of extraterritorial targeting of chosen entities or individuals. US has linked its charges against Adani to Adani's company for having raised $175 million from US investors for a $6 billion investment in solar energy in India. The total bribes the company paid in India, as alleged in the indictment, were higher than the comparatively paltry capital that it raised in the US. That's what he has said. Well, time for a short break. More news and updates on the other side.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Edge 50 Pro, world's first AI-powered pro-grade camera.
The last elections of 2024. It's the battle for India's economic heart. An election that will decide Maharashtra's future.
Can the big brother BJP manage the competing ambitions of Mahayuti? Can the Red Book rally the voters once again for Congress and its allies? So as Maharashtra's future trajectory takes shape, we report from the ground.
Two visions, two ideology, one verdict. An election where no caste chemistry can yield a perfect formula.
It's a state that is splintered with power battles. The big question, will Maharashtra poll outcome unify parties or divide them further? And who will emerge as Maharashtra's undisputed leader?
It's a web of frauds, calls, luring emails, threatening messages. Cyber frauds have cast their net wide and everyone is at risk. We track the victims, their horror stories as they get conned online, extorted and robbed of their hard-earned money. How to identify a cyber fraud and how to stay cyber safe. What are your options? Fraud.con, NDTV initiative for cyber safety. Only on NDTV 24/7.
हम ये चुनाव विकास के मुद्दे पर लड़ रहे हैं.
Let them come for an open debate with me. I've challenged Eknath Shinde multiple times.
Congress is in the worst situation in this state.
महायुति में भी इससे ज़्यादा dispute है.
Everything is fair in love and politics.
वोट देने वाले ही जिताने वाले हैं ना. So we worked on 4 options.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
India's IT capital is always buzz. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dwivedian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
This week on India Ascends. Why is Africa crucial to India's strategic and geopolitical calculus? Will COP29 address climate catastrophes, or will the deadlock in negotiations?
Good evening and welcome. You're watching the news. A quick look at the headlines at this hour. The Supreme Court gets tough on the Delhi air crisis, says that there will be no easing of curbs for at least 3 days and that there needs to be strict monitoring of entry points. A huge day tomorrow. Election results. All parties and major political formations in Jharkhand and Maharashtra hold meetings. The Mahavikas Aghadi claimed that they'll have a new chief minister within 12 hours of the results. The Congress appoints observers for Maharashtra. After the Telangana High Court's ruling regarding the defection of Bharatiya Rashtra Samiti MLAs to the Congress party, the court sets aside an earlier directive that mandated the Assembly Speaker to decide on the disqualification petitions within a 4-week deadline. After reports linking the Nijjar plot to Indian ministers and leaders, including the Prime Minister, Canada does a turnaround and says that there is no proof. The Tamil Nadu government and Odisha's BJD reject the charges on the Adani Group and refer to them as being baseless. Our top story: the Supreme Court has decided to maintain the stringent GRAP or Graded Response Action Plan for restrictions in Delhi and the National Capital Region for at least the next 3 days in response to the ongoing air pollution crisis. The court has mandated strict monitoring of all entry points into Delhi to control vehicle entry and has appointed 13 advocates to oversee the implementation of these measures. The Supreme Court has also directed the Delhi government to provide a detailed report by Monday on the enforcement of these pollution control measures, emphasizing that there will be no relaxation in restrictions until there's a significant improvement in air quality. My colleague Anushka joins us for more on this. This is important, Anushka, because for 2 reasons. Firstly, there is no let-up in air pollution over the northwest of India. And secondly, even if there is something momentary, it seemed to be a lot clearer today, the air pollution load is still quite severe.
Well, certainly, Vishnu, if we even talk about the AQI in Delhi NCR right now, it stands around 371. Now there is a slight relief than it was, measured from 2 days before. But what we are seeing is the government has failed in multiple points. They had even introduced 21 points focused initiatives. But right now, what we are seeing on ground is that every initiative that the government had planned has failed to work on ground. Now, whether it is the problem of implementation or whether the whole initiative were at fault. Now this is up to the government to decide, because what we are seeing is that the people living in Delhi NCR are suffering. And the Supreme Court even wrapped the state government and the city police and sought a report about how the GRAP 4 was implemented. 13 points were, the 13 hotspots are right now measured, and that, the Supreme Court has said that they all want the CCTV footage of, all the vehicles coming inside of Delhi NCR to know if actually they were carrying essential goods or were they even, allowed at this point when Graph 4 is implemented in Delhi NCR. The Supreme Court has also made it very clear that till they do not allow it, the Graph 4 will be maintained in Delhi NCR, because what we are seeing is that the AQI is right now, in very poor category. Now it is oscillating between severe category and the very poor category, but right now the meteorological factors are quite favorable for the people living in Delhi NCR. The wind speed is quite high, and that is why we are seeing this slight improvement, not because any government initiative has worked, because what we saw and what we are also seeing right now also is that the AQI is still 15 times worse than what it should be in a breathable environment, according to WHO also. What we are seeing is that the factors that are at work in Delhi NCR, the vehicular emissions that we are seeing, and also what the Graph 4 mandates is that the BS3 petrol and BS4 diesel vehicles should be banned from entering the city premises. But what we are seeing is that the city police is also quite failing, and also the government is not working as it should be. There are various gaps in the implementation, and
Indeed.
the CAQM also held its 18th subcommittee meeting yesterday only, and they tried to figure out a way to plug in all those gaps in the enforcement that will lead to the mitigation.
No, absolutely.
Of
And
this
so
air
lots
pollution
of steps
crisis.
need to
Back
be
you,
looked at very closely, Anushka. We'll leave it there. Thanks so much for sharing all of those details. Well, these are nervous times for our political parties and alliances deeply invested in the results of the assembly elections in Maharashtra and Jharkhand. Ahead of the results tomorrow, Ramesh Chennithala and Nana Patole of the Congress held meetings with leaders and candidates. Devendra Fadnavis and Bhupendra Yadav held a meeting with BJP leaders at the former's residence. Uddhav Thackeray also held meetings with a few Shiv Sena functionaries, and Eknath Shinde, the incumbent chief minister, holding meetings with Sena spokespersons as well.
Much awaited Maharashtra Assembly election results tomorrow. Difficult to predict at this point. Parties certainly in a huddle today. In fact, they're looking at all permutations and combinations to shore up numbers in case of a hung assembly. Of course, both sides very confident of a victory. Some of the Congress leaders, in fact, saying 165 will be their number, and that chief minister phase will also be decided within 12 hours of results. Mahayuti leaders, on the other hand, saying they will clinch close to 180 seats. So today, all the parties holding meetings, discussions on probabilities as well as strategies. Ramesh Chennithala, Nana Patole holding meeting with Congress leaders and candidates. Devendra Fadnavis and Bhupendra Yadav also held meeting with BJP leaders. Uddhav Thackeray also holding discussions with Sena functionaries this afternoon, and Eknath Shinde's meeting with Sena spokesperson as well. So parties certainly strategizing about what next if they are short of majority. They obviously have to take help of independents, rival candidates or smaller parties, and also have to make sure that their MLAs, their candidates, their leaders are all flocked together. So yes, looks like it's going to be a nail-biting result day tomorrow. Is it Mahayuti again, or will MVA manage to make a comeback? We will see what happens tomorrow.
The Adani Group has categorically rejected allegations made by US authorities in a case concerning alleged wrongdoing, labeling them as baseless and stressing their commitment to transparency and corporate governance. Tamil Nadu's minister has clarified that there are no direct business dealings with the Adani Group. Instead, transactions related to power are exclusively with the Solar Energy Corporation of India, distancing the state from this controversy. The Biju Janata Dal of Orissa has similarly dismissed the accusations as unfounded, emphasizing that their power agreements have been with government entities, not with the Adani Group directly. The former Foreign Secretary of India, Kamal Sibal, has criticized the US's move as an overreach, questioning the legitimacy of the US investigation on Indian soil and suggesting that any legal redress should be sought through Indian judicial systems if US investors are affected. The strategic affairs expert Brahma Chelani noted the US's pattern of extraterritorial legal actions linking the Adani case to the group's US investments relative to the alleged bribes paid in India. The Adani Group has rejected as baseless the move by a US department to name the group in a case of alleged wrongdoing. The Adani Group maintains that these are mere allegations and must be seen only as such, and has emphasized that it has steadfastly maintained the highest possible standards of corporate governance and transparency. The group has also decided to examine the legal course of action to be deployed in this particular case. One of the states allegedly involved, Tamil Nadu, the DMK government there has rejected the American charges as well.
தமிழ்நாடு மின்சார வாரியத்தை பொறுத்தவரை அதானி நிறுவனத்தோடு எந்த விதமான வணிக ரீதியிலான தொடர்புகளும் கடந்த 3 ஆண்டுகளாக இல்லை. அதை முதல்ல தெளிவுபடுத்தியது. வணிக ரீதியான தொடர்புகள் எந்த வகையிலும் தமிழ்நாடு மின்சார வாரியத்திற்கும் அதானி நிறுவனத்திற்கும் இல்லை.
After the Telangana High Court's ruling regarding the defection of the Bharatiya Rashtra Samiti MLAs to the Congress party, the Congress has set aside an earlier directive that mandated the Assembly Speaker to decide on the disqualification petitions within a 4-week deadline. Instead, the High Court has granted the Speaker the flexibility to decide within a reasonable time period.
Relief for Danam Nagendar, Kadiyam Srihari and Telam Venkatrao, who won as BRS MLAs in Telangana Assembly elections of 2023, but shifted loyalties to the Congress. A division bench of the Telangana High Court has set aside a single-judge order of September 9 that said the Speaker should take a decision on a plea for the disqualification within 4 weeks. The division bench has ruled that the Speaker should take a decision within reasonable time and that a time frame cannot be set by the judiciary.
వాళ్ళు 10 సంవత్సరాల అధికారం ఉన్నప్పుడు 60 మంది శాసనసభ్యుల్ని శాసనమండలి సభ్యుల్ని నిర్లజ్జగా పార్టీలో చేర్చుకొని పార్టీలను కూడా వాళ్ళ పార్టీలో విలీనం చేసుకొని ఈరోజు తెలుగుదేశం పార్టీకి సంబంధించి కానీ వైఎస్ఆర్ పార్టీకి సంబంధించిన కానీ కాంగ్రెస్ పార్టీని కూడా విలీనం చేసుకొని ప్రజాస్వామ్యాన్ని కూని చేసినటువంటి ఈరోజు కేటీఆర్ గారు గొప్ప 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 మాటలు పెద్ద మాటలు అసహించుకునేటువంటి మాటలకు ఈరోజు ఏం సమాధానం చెప్తారు అంటున్నారు.
BRS Working President K.T. Ramarao insists that a Supreme Court directive has defined reasonable time as 3 months and they would again go to court if the Speaker delays any further.
ఆ కేసులో 3 నెలల లోపల ఖచ్చితంగా స్పీకర్ గారు నిర్ణయం తీసుకోవాలని కవర్డ్ జడ్జిమెంట్ ఉంది. కాబట్టి ఒకవేళ స్పీకర్ గారు నేను నిర్ణయం తీసుకోకుండా కాలయాపన చేస్తాను ఇంకా కూడా అనుకుంటే తప్పకుండా మళ్ళీ కోర్టుకు పోతాం.
The Assembly Secretary had challenged the single-judge order, contending that the court can review the issue only after the Speaker's decision. The bench, however, said the Speaker must keep in mind the purpose of the anti-defection law and the tenure of the Assembly. When the BRS was in power, in its first term, KCR had made a turncoat MLA into a minister without his resigning or going in for a bypoll. In its second term, the Congress legislature party was split and merged with the BRS. When the Congress came to power, as many as 10 BRS MLAs have shifted loyalties, and the senior Congress leadership, including the Chief Minister, have been mocking the BRS leadership, saying that they are going to empty out their party. In Hyderabad, with camera person Nagraju, Uma Sudhir, NDTV.
The Justin Trudeau-led Canadian government has denied a report linking top Indian leaders to criminal activities in Canada, saying that it's speculative and inaccurate. In a statement days after a strong rebuttal from New Delhi, the National Security and Intelligence Advisor to Justin Trudeau, the Canadian government has said that it is not aware of any evidence of the claims made by a Canadian media house, citing unnamed officials. India had rubbished Canada's claims and responded sharply to what it calls ludicrous claims, with the External Affairs Ministry spokesperson calling the report a smear campaign. Well, joining us now, Terry Miliuski. He's an author and has looked very closely at the global Khalistan movement as a senior journalist. We're also joined by Professor Swaran Singh, Professor of International Relations at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Terry, let me come to you first. Does it not seem odd that there would be reports which suggested some sort of link between the Prime Minister of India, the National Security Advisor, the Foreign Minister, and the Nijjar case? Then all of a sudden, the Canadian government goes on record and says, no, hang on a second, that's not the case at all. The question is important because presumably journalists would have been briefed that there was some sort of link, when now the government turns around and says that in fact there wasn't.
Yes, this is in a way, this is sort of leak malpractice on Canada's part. You can't really blame Trudeau. He wasn't the unnamed official who did this leak to the Globe and Mail, but the substance of it was that we suspect, we don't have evidence, we suspect that it's not possible that these goings on, these criminal activities in Canada could have been approved without the knowledge of the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, National Security Advisor, and they named them all: Modi, Jaishankar, Ajit Doval. And then in the rest of the story, still not naming any sources, It was said that, they don't have concrete evidence, but they suspect this. And the government felt the need, because of the strong reaction in India, to point out that this isn't the government officially saying this. The government, in fact, officially denies it and took those names off the table, saying we are not aware of any evidence implicating these individuals, and we're not making any charges against Prime Minister Modi, etc. Well, you can understand that it's a little bit late in the day. This leak should never have been made, but that's all it was. It was an unauthorized and inaccurate leak, and the government has done what it can to fix it. That doesn't solve the problem, though.
Terry, there's been another interesting... Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead with your point.
I'm sorry. I just like to finish on this point.
Yeah.
The government is not withdrawing the allegations that it has made. It's really just withdrawing the allegations that it has not made.
Terry, now let me read that statement. The government of Canada has not stated, nor is it aware of evidence linking Prime Minister Modi, Minister Jaishankar or NSA Doval to the serious criminal activity within Canada. Any suggestion to the contrary is both speculative and inaccurate. It's an interesting statement which comes, Terry, at a time when things between India and Canada are, let's face it, pretty awful. How would you, as a senior journalist, look at the timing of the statement? And can we infer that there may be some talks at some level happening somewhere in the background?
Well, there are some talks, at some level, as you put it, in the background. But it, unfortunately, has been at a pretty low level, with the single exception of the fact that Mr. Biden, at the recent summit, G20, did apparently draw Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Modi aside together. We don't know what that was about. We can guess, because those happen to be the three countries involved in this smackdown, this diplomatic disaster over the allegations made a year ago by Justin Trudeau. So what seems to be happening to me is that there's very bad blood here, where the Indians have been saying, you haven't given us a shred of evidence, and the Canadians are saying, oh yes, and we're leaking quite happily that we certainly did give you a bunch of evidence, and Mr. Doval turned it down saying, we're not going to help you. We're not going to cooperate with this investigation, which for the Canadians, they interpreted that as a red flag. That means that the government of India is implicated because it clearly has something to hide. Otherwise, it would be willing to come forward and say, well, we're shocked to hear about these activities, and we'll help you get to the bottom of it. They didn't say that. So the bad blood persists. You have accusations that come out in the media anonymously that are then retracted officially. It's not getting better, it's getting worse, isn't it?
Professor Swaran Singh, the other very interesting development was Canada's transport minister, within I think 48 hours of declaring that there would be additional screening for India for passengers traveling between Canada and India, has now pulled that and has said that no, in fact, we withdraw that. That's not necessary. I'm just speculating over here, but that also seems to be, a positive move in a small way. Would you read anything into that?
Definitely, Vishnu, both these things, and I agree with Terry, such things in terms of leaks do not happen on such sensitive issues without green signal from the very top. Because this whole anti-India tirade has been personally carried by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So any deviations, any corrections, course corrections will have his nod definitely. And both these indications to me are that since June last year, the relationship was being constantly complicated by these escalating accusations, starting with the talking about India's agents to taking all the way to the national leaders. To I think these two being a signal for Canada deciding to climb down. Now, what could be their reasons is a matter of speculation. Of course, Terry mentioned of a conversation that President Joe Biden had with Prime Minister Modi and Justin Trudeau in Rio de Janeiro. Apparently, to me, another important reason could be the fact that President Donald Trump is now designated president to take over presidency for next 4 years. And his relationship with Trudeau and the relationship with Prime Minister Modi is very instructive in that sense of where could have been this felt need to de-escalate the situation with India. And I think most important at the base of it all is the constant, firm, but very, very considered, calibrated, seasoned, firm response that India provided on each of these issues, which must have had its own impact. That in that sense, Canada is the one which is drawing bad reputation for singularly carrying on this tirade, starting with the credible allegations is the language which continued from the very beginning, without having any shred of evidence. And there all people were talking about it. And since the backlash inside Canada was also a factor, this is a good sign, let me say, that if they have decided to climb down from this escalatory ladder, I think it's ultimately good, but we'll have to work a lot still to resolve issues which are still on the table.
Terry, just a final question to you. The other side of looking at this is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So in fact, I think it was a regional police force, once again saying that consular activities cannot be held by the Indian mission presently, not even within a police premises. Now, I find that strange. If the police cannot protect diplomats inside a police premises, wherever that may be, it just seems to suggest that perhaps they don't want to protect them or want them to do this consular work.
Well, your word strange is very polite. It's worse than that, isn't it? I mean, what's happening is that Canada is effectively, or at least the local police in these cases, are giving a veto to Khalistani demonstrators on meetings that they want to shut down. They want to shut down these life certificate camps where you can go and get help with your paperwork for your pension, which is not a trivial thing. It's a good thing for older people that they don't have to go downtown and find the High Commissioner and so forth. It's helpful for them. And these, the threats of demonstrations aimed at what they call Indian spies who are allegedly going to give out these life certificates. There's something bad about that because they'll be gathering intelligence. Well, what? About how many grandkids they have? I mean, it doesn't really add up. But what's happening is that they are, by making the threat that they're going to be there and they're going to be making trouble, which is their purpose, they are basically exercising a veto on the meeting. So they've managed to scare the temple management and the High Commission of India into cancelling one or more of these life certificate camps, which is a bad development. And they're also, the police are asking for basically protection money. They're saying, we're not going to help you if there's violence. We're not able to look after your safety unless you pay us. You hire us off-duty cops to come and look after your meeting. Again, the Khalistanis get a veto. That's not the way it should be done in Canada. The police should come and ensure your safety if you're under threat, and you pay taxes for that already, and you pay plenty. So this is a very bad development, the way this is going, and what's really underneath it, of course, as you know, is an attempt by Sikhs for Justice and its leader, Gaurie Singh to ally themselves with the Canadian government against a common enemy, as it were, that is to say, the government of India. And they're trying to make it Sikhs versus Hindus, whereas really, again, as you well know, it's Khalistanis against Sikhs and Hindus.
All right, we leave it there. Thank you both very much for being with us. We'll keep tracking the state of the relationship on these programs that we do. In other news, amidst an escalation in violence in Manipur, there was an important security review meet today. And in fact, a new strategy is being worked out to control violence. New standard operating procedures for security forces, more deployment of central forces are critical in part of the strategy. The centre has recently announced that 50 fresh companies of Central Police Forces, CAPF, would be deployed in Manipur.
And, security review meeting. And in this security review meeting, we reviewed the security of all the districts and Imphal city. We discussed the issues threadbare with all the districts, along with DCs and SPs, and we noted points of their concern, which we will be addressing. We are distributing forces to protect the life and properties of the citizens and vulnerable areas and vulnerable points. All these will be covered within a few days.
This review meeting which took place this evening is very crucial given the fact that this comes after last week's violence that had escalated. There were deaths, there were shootouts between militants and security forces, and today the security advisor to Manipur, Mr. Kuldeep Singh, who is a former DG of CRPF, he chairs the Unified Command which has the state forces, the state police, the central forces, the central paramilitary forces, as well as the army, the Assam Rifles. So the Unified Command today reviewed the security arrangement, and a new SOP has been formulated, which includes the area domination exercise, the operation, as well as the joint operation. Now they have decided that in every district there will be a coordination cell that will coordinate between all the security forces operating in that area. There will be joint control rooms. So in joint control rooms you will have people from the Manipur police, the paramilitary forces, as well as army as well. Center has decided to send another 90 companies of security forces to Manipur. That would make the presence of at least 288 companies of central forces in Manipur, and in fact the forces are coming in, so those forces will be used for area domination. The priority at this moment is to make sure that there is no further loss of life and properties of common people, of citizens.
Cricket, and 17 wickets fell on day one of the Perth Test, a story that has been headlined by fast, fiery and fierce pace bowling by bowlers from either side that forced batters into errors. Australia 67 for 7 at stumps on day one, having shot out India for 150 on the opening day.
India's horror show with the bat continued even down under. Jaiswal, Padikkal and Kohli were done in before lunch on the opening day as India chose to bat. A huge controversy over this wicket of KL Rahul that even saw him question the umpire.
I wonder, there was so definitely a noise.
However, India's young talent was shining brightly at Perth. Nitish Reddy had a 48-run stand with Pant. The duo played some sensational strokes. Reddy, on debut, scored 41. India were bundled out for 150, all 10 wickets to catches, including a spectacular one in the slips. As India came out to bowl, Jasprit Bumrah was breathing fire. He led the counter-attack from the front.
That's out. Great bowling. The angles worked.
The skipper also sent India's nemesis Steve Smith back.
He's done it. Brilliant.
KL Rahul took a fantastic catch in third slip to send back Mitchell Marsh. India kept chipping away. Labuschagne's wicket, a huge moment in the match. The day ended with the hosts at 67 for 7. The hosts trailing by 83 runs, an advantage to India.
Delight for India, and it's chaos for Australia.
Absolutely incredible match. We're going to take a short break. Coming up after that, a look at some satellite images to re-establish the point that very few people have a real idea of just how many farm fires are taking place in Punjab. That's up next.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Edge 50 Pro, world's first AI-powered pro-grade camera.
I now request the Honorable Prime Minister to launch NDTV World and address the summit.
It was the grand launch of NDTV World by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. NDTV World, as he laid out his vision for the India century at the NDTV World Summit.
ऐसी सदी जिसमें भारत के प्रयासों से दुनिया में स्थिरता आए
in the presence of those who are shaping our future.
मेरी तरफ से आपको ढेर सारी शुभकामनाएं हैं।
NDTV World, your new home for global news is here. Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app, news that matters to you. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number 1 in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
So a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
Hello and welcome. For the last several weeks, we've been tracking the rise in air pollution across the entire Indo-Gangetic Plain. And one of the big concerns has been farm fire burning in Punjab. And the fact that there is no real clarity on the number of farm fires taking place. The Supreme Court has said that farm fires must stop, stubble burning must end. But that's something that's been said at various levels over the last many years. Nobody really cares about it. Nobody is doing anything about it at all. The sense earlier on was that the number of farm fires in Punjab this time might in fact be lower, but new data which has emerged suggests that in fact only a part of the farm fires that are taking place may in fact be counted. In other words, nobody really knows how many farm fires there are. Why are farm fires important? They are important because the pollution caused as a result of these farm fires caused the national capital region of our country to become a gas chamber. Air pollution levels, including as we speak right now, are way over, several times over what the World Health Organization considers to be safe or good quality air. And there is no letting up on the fact that farmers continue to burn on their fields. So we'll be looking at that. But this comes on a day when, in a connected development, the Supreme Court has decided to maintain the stringent graded action response plan for restrictions in Delhi and the National Capital Region for at least the next 3 days in response to the ongoing air pollution crisis. It's related to what's happening in Punjab and elsewhere. The court has mandated strict monitoring of all entry points into Delhi to control vehicle entry and has appointed 13 advocates to oversee the implementation of these measures. The Supreme Court has also directed the Delhi government to provide a detailed report by Monday on the enforcement of these pollution control measures, emphasizing that there will be no relaxation in restrictions until there is a significant improvement in air quality. Well, for the last several days, we've brought you reports on how intense farm fires from Punjab have contributed massively to the overall pollution load across North India and resulted in our national capital region becoming a virtual gas chamber with the PM 2.5 count at extremely dangerous levels. In order to give you a better idea of the number of farm fires that contributed to this, we reached out to Maxar for satellite imagery of the greater Amritsar area. And here's what we saw. Take a look at this image. This is an image from 2:18 p.m. on the 18th of November, just a couple of days back. What you see here is an apocalyptic scene. It looks like a war zone, but in fact, this is all smoke. It is not from the impact of bombs, but from farmers burning their agricultural stubble. Take a look at this image for a moment. What we can now show you over here is Amritsar Airport. You can see Amritsar Airport. Remember, there were massive flight disruptions in Amritsar Airport on the 18th of November. But it is over here that you can actually see dozens of farm fires which we've marked. Now, we've counted these farm fires, and there are 26 in this area to the west of Amritsar Airport, 26 independent farm fires to the west of Amritsar Airport. We've circled all of these. We've got many more details on ndtv.com. Now take a look at these two boxes, right? There's the big box and then there's the small box as well. Let's turn our attention first to the small box. And in that small box, as you can see, is this huge fire. It is one gigantic fire emanating, and imagine the air pollution a single fire like this can cause. This is one fire in that small box, and you can see the smoke trail that it leaves behind. Let's go back to the previous image and focus now on the big box, and let's zoom into that big box, and we've noticed 8 farm fires over here. Each of these farm fires, depending on what you look at, show their smoke plume as well. All across this region, it all adds up to what has been absolutely horrific. And finally, what is the area that we're actually talking about over here? Let's move to the next image so that we can show you and make an important couple of points. Right up top is Amritsar. The yellow box up there is the area that we have focused on. As you can see, in that yellow box, there is not a single red dot. Why am I focused on these red dots? Well, these red dots come from sensors on board NASA satellites. These made a pass on the 18th of November at about 2 p.m. The Maxar satellite images that you just saw on this report come from a satellite pass which happened a little while after that, and they have not been registered on the NASA satellite, which flew by a little earlier. In other words, these are fires which are not registered in the overall fire count. In just one small area, we saw 25 clear fires taking place. This is critical because the point that's been made over and over again is that there is a severe undercount of fires in the Punjab. All of it adds up. Just how many fires are there? Are satellites the only way of accurately getting that number? And if they aren't, then we may never really know how many fires there are. All we do know is the pollutant load in the atmosphere, and that's something that's killing us. Let's just go back to the very first image of this story, right, to give you an idea of this mess. This entire area, you can see clouds near Amritsar Airport and the city of Amritsar, air quality index well over 400. It is called serious. This is what a city which has been bombed looks like. But it's not a city which has been bombed by weapons. It's a city which has been bombed by pollution. Well, towards the end of that report, I used the word clouds. They weren't clouds. That was smog, right? And that's what is killing us. It is extremely polluted. Joining us now, Dr. Bhargav Krishna, Fellow at the Sustainable Futures Collaborative, and Hiren Jetwa, a research scientist at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, who's been looking at all of this very, very closely. You know, Hiren, you sent me some interesting images today, a GIF. In fact, we've got that on top. And the point is that these farm fires are continuing even today, well into the afternoon, right? What does that mean?
That's true, yeah. There is, okay, I looked at this satellite animation from this geostationary, the South Korean geostationary satellite, and I don't see any respite or any relief from the farm fires. You could clearly see in that animation that there's numerous fires are still burning after 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. onwards. So the fire activities are still ongoing. This year it's a little unusual because this is like now we are in 3rd week of November. The fire should have gone down significantly, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Every day I see this the puffs of the very thick smoke cloud coming out from the western Punjab, close to the border actually. And there are also fires in other fires in that region. and most of it is appear to be lit by the fires are lit by after 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and 4 p.m. once the NASA satellite pass over that region. So this year it seems that the burning activities has been delayed also. Not just in terms of hours from noon to afternoon, no, but it's also if you look at this whole evolution of this fire season from October to November end. This is quite unusual to see this many fires, and you can always see this blanket of smoke over the entire northern India. Seeing this during the third week of November, this many fires is a bit unusual.
Dr. Bhargav Krishna, and we're going to bring up those satellite pictures once again. Is there now any doubt, not just on the basis of what Hiren is saying, but several others now, that we've been deluding ourselves for years into thinking that the farm fires are going down. In fact, they may not be going down at all. And that has a great deal to do with the area which is actually burnt, because there is data which suggests that that area may be going up as well. Can you explain that correlation?
Oh, absolutely, Vishnu. And I think this is a time for us to pause and think about how we've actually done this analysis over the last several years to try and understand whether the policies that have been put in place have actually been effective at all. Because the assumption has been that because we have taken several steps, we have provided thousands of crores worth of equipment to farmers, happy seeders, other ex situ and in situ management devices and opportunities to harvest stubble and reuse elsewhere. Whether this has all been effective or not, I think the proof is right there in front of you on the screen that this is the situation that we're dealing with. We have been reliant on NASA imagery to get us the information on whether there is an active fire at that point in time, but the reality is that is a single snapshot over the course of a day. If we've been getting anecdotal information from Punjab over the last couple of years that farmers have picked up on this information and that they may likely be burning in the second half of the day. But we didn't have active